Hey everybody, it's Crypto-Anarchist here, and I'm bringing you guys a short video on a critique of Vitalik Buterin's recent article on decentralization. Targeting Vitalik here because I really don't like the way he talks about decentralization. It's the way the majority of the community frames the decentralization debate, and it's kind of incorrect in my interpretation. Um, and the reason why I say it's incorrect for my interpretation is that everything he says in this article, for the most part, is correct. It's just the way he talks about decentralization is not the way in which the decentralization in Bitcoin matters, and specifically how it relates to a proof of work system as opposed to a proof of stake system. This entire article, to some extent, was sort of an advertisement for proof of stake systems, and there's a lot of issues with proof of stake systems that people just don't understand, like as a whole. One person who's been bringing these up a lot recently is Emin Gun Sirer. I've been talking about Emin for a while. I really like Emin. Emin's one of my favorite people in the space. But when it comes to proof of work versus proof of stake, he really doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. And so, um, like, his whole point here is he's talking about in the absence of an attack, what's the point of all the mining energy? Like, what's the point of it? And he says if you had just a unicorn that did absolutely everything that the mining did in Bitcoin, but it just used 1/1000th of the energy, which one would you use, the unicorn or the proof of work mining? Well, if the unicorn could do it, obviously you would use the unicorn. But what Emin doesn't understand is that the resource waste is actually what forces the Bitcoin network to form a complete graph. Okay, and this is what Vitalik doesn't understand either. When he talks about decentralization, he never brings up network topology, or at least to the extent that is necessary. In the um, picture that Vitalik uses, or in the image that he uses in this article, it's the top half of this image here. This is the image that I wanted to put for my BlockPress account. By the way, BlockPress, you guys got to use those goddamn root hashes for your shit. We don't want to pay a third of a cent to post a goddamn tweet. Twitter does it for free. You guys can do it for free too, and you can still store all the information on the blockchain with a Merkle root. Sorry to yell, but that's just a stupid point that nobody's talking about either. But when it comes to proof of work mining systems, and what Vitalik Buterin and Emin Gun Sirer don't understand, it's the fact that these top three things, they're not Bitcoin, okay? They're not Bitcoin whatsoever. It's that bottom left thing that's Bitcoin. And the whole point, and the whole reason that Bitcoin's decentralized is just because if you look at the bottom left there, each node there, each dark point on that network, they're all connected to all other nodes in the shortest possible path. And yeah, each node is connected to each other node. Okay, the whole point that, or the whole reason that this makes Bitcoin decentralized is because in order to control all the information coming from one node to another, um, you need to control all the nodes on the network. Like, you can't just cut this network in half. And the only known way to, attack the Bitcoin network is the 51% mining attack. Okay, and so the 51% mining attack, we'll get to that later on, because Vitalik talks about how it's harder to 51% attack a proof of stake network than it is a proof of work network. And so long as the block reward is the right size, and I would say any block reward that drops to 0 in a proof of work blockchain will eventually kill that proof of work blockchain. But as long as the proof of work blockchain has a high enough block reward, the idea that proof of stake is more secure is completely bonkers. And it's because of this complete graph theory, because with proof of work you can guarantee, like, in almost instantaneously, that you got complete consensus, not only on like blocks that propagate, but also on transactions that enter the mempool and things of that nature. And you can't do that with proof of stake. And the only way you can try and approximate that with proof of stake, and this is the way that Emin Gun Sirer's got a couple ideas on how to do it. Ethereum's trying to do Casper, but they all are based upon using penalties for the stakers, and this is completely different from Bitcoin, where, like, if in Bitcoin all you need is the hardware and you can become a full node. Obviously it costs money for that hardware, but nobody's stopping you, nobody's punishing you for trying to join the network. There's no sort of punishments whatsoever. There's only a profit incentive that makes people want to follow the consensus rules. So this is a completely decentralized and permissionless environment. It's a completely anarchical environment in that there's no rulers. Like, there's not even necessarily there's rules that you want to follow in order to profit, but it's hard to even say that there's rules to follow, because you could, technically speaking, 51% attack the network. It's just highly unprofitable to do so. The whole point with Casper is that, you're actually taking people's money, which is, it's a completely different thing. But anyways, when you go to proof of work systems, the whole reason that proof of work is completely necessary, and the whole reason why Emin Gun Sirer gets this wrong, again going back to his argument, why is this energy spent being used and why don't we use a unicorn instead? The reason why you don't use a unicorn is because the unicorn doesn't waste the energy. And I know that seems like a circular argument, but if we look at Bitcoin right here, just imagine like in this complete graph, like all the information that these nodes are sending to each other, all these hashes that they're doing, because not only do these nodes, like these nodes that it shows in this network are the nodes that are full nodes. Not every miner is a full node. Most miners are workers. A worker doesn't actually run a full node, they just use a full node from somebody else, so the full node actually has to send information to the worker. So like the Bitcoin network is not only the full nodes, but it's the miners as well. It's the SPV wallets, and all the information is sent very quickly between all of these sources, because one, like if you don't include the SPV wallet transactions, you don't get the transaction fee. So the miners are like, they want to include as many transactions as they can that they receive from SPV wallets. The miners want to make sure that the hashes that the miners that they're having run, or the workers that they're having mine for them, like they're all working in an organized fashion and it's all running very fast with hyper quick connection speeds. And then they want to also make sure they're connected to all the other nodes as quickly as possible, because if they're not, then they'll lose the block propagation race. And if you look at block propagation speeds in the Bitcoin network, it's actually down below half a second, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. Like it's approaching like as fast as it possibly can be for at least 50% or more of the network. And as long as you get 50% or more, generally speaking, that block will win out the next block. That's not completely true, but it's very hard to try and beat those times as far as getting a more highly connected network. You can't really do it for any sort of network anyway, or anywhere, and Bitcoin is not centralized, it's completely decentralized. So if Bitcoin can do it that fast using proof of work, like that's an incredible achievement. And it all comes because, like, if you don't have these fast connection speeds for all of these aspects, whether it's block propagation or receiving incoming transactions, and again, Bitcoin is not fully matured yet, so these aren't as fast as they can go, but they're getting they're getting there. But if the connections aren't as fast as possible, then you lose out a huge amount of profit here. And the reason why you lose out on a huge amount of profit is because you actually lose out on the money that you invested, your capital investment here. And so since there's no capital investment in proof of stake, and since proof of stake can orphan multiple times, that doesn't affect the miner's revenue. That doesn't, like, the resource loss just doesn't exist there, and that's the whole reason proof of stake was created, was so there wasn't such resource loss. But it's the resource loss that forces the network to plug up all the holes. Okay, so it's the resource loss that creates the complete graph. Okay, and that's the whole point of this whole proof of work system, is to have resource loss so that you plug up the holes. And so with proof of stake, you just don't have that whatsoever. And the other thing people have to remember is that with proof of stake, there's a real huge problem of social consensus dictating which blockchain is the true blockchain and which one is the fake one. Because as we said before, with Casper, which is supposed to be the big daddy for proof of stake, or for Ethereum, which is the it's supposed to be the leading proof of stake coin, which, by the way, uses proof of work, which sort of tells you a lot about the validity of proof of stake. But anyways, with Casper, they punish you if you don't follow the correct blockchain. Well, this leads to a lot of tyranny issues, because what happens if they can punish you in such a way that if you follow the wrong blockchain, they can try and punish you on both blockchains. I don't know, like, what would happen if Ethereum did have its one split already to Ethereum Classic, but what if there was a more contentious split? Would they allow it? Because, I mean, the Ethereum developers, or the developers on Ethereum already came out and said they're communists that are going to censor people off the platform, and they're going to censor them ethically, and I've never seen ethical censoring by communists before, but maybe they will. I have a lot of respect for Vitalik Buterin, but as far as if you're talking about, you have people who the only reason that they can validate the transactions on the network, or add new blocks to the network, is because they have money, seeing as how everyone has money. That's not a very high bar that you're setting for requirements for adding new blocks to the blockchain. Whereas in proof of work, it's like you got to buy this machinery where, like, unless you're acting as a good steward of the network, you're not going to make that much money. Okay, And obviously someone's going to bring up selfish mining. As far as selfish mining goes for proof of work cryptocurrency, so long as a majority of miners are not the malicious selfish miner, the majority of honest miners can form their own selfish mining pool, and then just, they blacklist the selfish miner and don't accept his blocks, and that's the protection from selfish mining. Not a great protection, but it is a protection. So selfish mining is sort of a non-issue. It's an issue that's a non-issue. But again, the whole point of proof of work mining is when you buy this machine, this fucking machine that just sits there. That's what it does. It just sits there unless you use it to help validate transactions honestly. And again, the only weakness in proof of work right now is selfish mining or a low block reward. And selfish mining is fixed, like we have a defense for selfish mining. A low block reward is fixed by just increasing the block reward to increase the amount of incentive for security for the network. But as long as you have those two things correct, you create this vanguard, this collection of entrepreneurs where their profit is dictated completely by how well they protect the network, and that's all that they do. Okay, so with proof of stake, like let's assume, let's assume Ethereum becomes the world currency. What happens if Vitalik dies and he leaves all his fortune to some idiot son that he has? And let's assume most people don't stake their currency, so the idiot son he has is basically almost a majority of the staking power on the network. And then, if he's an idiot son, what makes you think that he's going to uphold the network that well? As opposed to, let's say Satoshi Nakamoto on Bitcoin. Let's say he dies and he gives his idiot son all of his money. Well, his idiot son can't ruin Bitcoin. His idiot son can ruin the fortune, but he can't ruin Bitcoin. So this is a completely different power dynamic, especially considering someone could make the argument as well, like what happens, what if Satoshi's son spent all his money on Bitcoin miners, then couldn't he ruin the network? And the answer is no, because one, if you spent $1 billion invested in Bitcoin miners, that's not some small task. You can't just do that and just buy the miners and then just voila, you now have the power to put new blocks on the network. You have to run them. You have to start a business. You have to hire multiple employees, probably thousands upon thousands of employees. It's just insane the things that you have to do. And so there's no easy way for someone just to become a miner, one of the top miners in Bitcoin or any sort of proof of work setup. And there is a very simple way for people to become a top validator in proof of stake, and that's just have the most money. And that can create a lot of issues, especially considering what happens if there's a massive hack. Then the massive hacker now has massive increased power over the network because he's got massive staking potential. And it's there's just a lot of issues, a lot of security issues with the proof of stake model that the proof of work model does not have. But again, going back to the decentralization, just remember this picture. Remember those magic words off to the right. Those magic words, that's the reason that Bitcoin's so powerful. It's those magic words right there. No, it's not actually. Those words have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Now, they sort of do, but I'm not going to explain that for this video, or what that saying has to do with Bitcoin in this video. All I want you guys to understand is that the decentralization of Bitcoin comes from the fact that it's a complete graph, and the reason that it's a complete graph is because all that resource waste in Bitcoin, if you waste it, that's lost profit for a miner, so miners don't want to waste it, so they plug up all the holes, so they make sure that all the information travels as fast as possible and everybody gets all the information all at once. Okay, so that's the reason that Bitcoin works so well. That's the reason that proof of work works so well. That's the reason why Emin Gun Sirer, he's being a little bit of a rat when he comes into the Bitcoin Cash community. He did do a lot of good things for it, but it's he comes in and he does the typical lefty thing of he comes in, offers us a carrot, says some nice things, then really tries to backstab us and be like, oh, proof of work's completely retarded. And it's no. He doesn't understand that Bitcoin's a complete graph, and you can, this goes back to his argument with Craig Wright and on selfish mining. Craig Wright was explaining to the selfish mining crowd that Bitcoin's a complete graph, so you can't really symbol it. Emin Gun Sirer still doesn't understand the entire the entire implications of Bitcoin being a complete graph and what the proof of work system has to do with forcing or not forcing Bitcoin, because it just naturally makes Bitcoin a complete graph, and it's the fact that there's energy waste. Okay, that's why you need the energy waste. That's why proof of stake doesn't really work. That's why these Casper systems don't really work. That's why the Ethereum developers really bashed Emin Gun Sirer on his consensus protocols, because they weren't full consensus. It wasn't like everybody was completely in line with everybody else. This is the issue with proof of stake, is with proof of stake you always have to take some sort of shortcut. Proof of work just naturally forms into this hyper-connected network where there's complete consensus after a couple of milliseconds on everything, on transactions into the network, on blocks that propagate, on everything. Everybody tries to talk about how block time matters. EOS is supposed to be the new cool cryptocurrency because it's got super fast block times, and it's like block time is completely fucking irrelevant. Okay, it's connectivity time of your network, and the proof of work system has proven that it creates hyper-fast connective networks. Proof of stake has not proven that that's possible yet. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying, I don't know, a proof of stake, it might not be possible to create hyper-connective networks. If you do create hyper-connective networks, they're all based upon punishment and taking money of stakers if they screw up, which is prone to abuse and prone to issues in and of itself. And then it's because proof of stake is sort of, that you don't have to redo the work on the longest chain, because you don't have to do that. One of the issues I have with it is it's sort of based on social consensus, and that's one of the things Vitalik Buterin says is a benefit. But as far as the Bitcoin Cash split goes, I think we've shown that social consensus, even among people who call themselves libertarians, tends towards tyranny. So we should really avoid it. And we should instead focus on the incentives of the network forming decentralization, and the incentives of the mathematics of the protocol forming decentralization. But yeah, I really didn't like this article by Vitalik Buterin, so I really think he has some things he probably should recant. He probably won't. He'll probably send me some more links to articles that say exactly what I say in my videos. We'll get that a little bit. One thing that I've noticed is that I think is kind of awesome. This community, the one thing that I think is great about this community is they're very active amongst, on all platforms. So I'll see my videos posted somewhere like Reddit or something, and then, I saw my video Ethereum will fail. Vitalik Buterin actually responded to it, linked me to a bunch of articles that they said the same thing that I said, just in different ways, in more academic terms. It really irritated me. But I see a lot of people in this community who post my videos all over the place, and I think the reason that I get posted so often is just because, we have a wide variety of topics that we go over, and they are all pretty, high level, and I cover them pretty well. I'm a jack of all trades as far as cryptocurrency goes. I'm not an ace in any sort of category, so I always get, told off by these developers in some ways that are pretty correct. Other ways they're not. Recently, when I or somebody put up my video for the recent privacy coin video that I made, and then I don't know if this is the real Amory Sechet. I never know if it's the real social media profiles of these people. I don't really pay that much attention to social media, other than this YouTube channel, which I just basically post videos on. That's for the most part it. You'll see me other places every once in a while, but not all that often. But anyways, Amory Sechet, it's like, yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Bulletproofs make him look like a complete idiot, basically, which to some extent he was correct. So if we go back to this, just so that you guys understand the error that I made, it's not a real big error, but it's obvious that I've irritated quite a few people. But if we look at that picture that I had, as far as the privacy protocols are concerned, bulletproofs don't give you recipient privacy completely, because it completely hides the transaction amounts. But recipient privacy, you still know which address the transaction's going to with bulletproofs, so you need stealth addresses added to it as well. So if you do stealth addresses and bulletproofs, that's at least a yellow bar for recipient privacy, and hides transactions amounts becomes completely green. And then, like we said before with bulletproofs for Zcoin, the trusted setup's removed, so Zcoin becomes the only coin where there's no negatives as far as the coin is concerned. You might say that the recipient privacy could be improved, which is probably true, but if you're using stealth addresses, and then they're going to have encrypted communication between nodes, there's a lot of extra privacy benefits, and it already uses Tor encryption. That's pretty easy to use for users. There's a lot of benefits to using Zcoin, but I just find it funny when I sort of irritate these developers and things like that. But the one thing that I really enjoy about when these developers and whatnot try and insult me or call me out on small small mistakes that I make, like these small minor mistakes of omission that I make. At least they're watching, you know. At least they see what I'm making, and at least they're paying attention because I've got things to say. You know, I'm not again, I'm not a developer, and I'm not even a computer programmer. The one thing that a lot of people get hung up on in Bitcoin is they're like, oh, I'm not a computer programmer, I can't understand it. You can actually do, like, the one thing people don't understand is you can actually do everything you can, like all the programming in Bitcoin, you can do it by hand. You just do it very slowly, so everything in Bitcoin just works really fast. Just like I said before, like proof of work is just built upon making everything as fast as possible. That's the whole reason proof of work, you know, works. That's why I don't like proof of stake. Don't get me started on delegated proof of stake like, you know, EOS uses. That shit irritates the shit out of me, and I got into it with the ARC people way back a long time ago when I didn't really, you know, my arguments on cryptocurrencies weren't as solid as they are now. But anyways, yeah, I guess I'm sort of, you know, talking too much on this issue. The main points I just wanted to make here is that these issues, as far as cryptocurrencies are concerned, guys, like the top developers in these spaces, they don't even completely understand cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrencies, they're not just cryptographic systems, they're not just computer code, they're not just algorithms, they're not just money. They're an economic game. It's a very simple economic game, and it's bound by, it's secured by cryptography. So in Bitcoin, it's the proof of work system. In Ethereum, they're trying the proof of stake system. The proof of work system is the only game system that has proven to work, you know, so far for cryptocurrencies at a large scale. Proof of stake seems to work. The question is, does it work as well as proof of work? I don't know. I don't think so. But don't let any of these top developers try to, you know, silence you and make you not have your voice heard, because a lot of them make a lot of mistakes. Like, as far as Emin Gun goes for this whole privacy thing, where he's like, oh, you made a mistake on bulletproofs when you said it gives you full recipient privacy. Like, it's like oh man, what a fucking mistake. I remember that time when you tried to put the zero cash protocol on Bitcoin Cash, when you can get perfect privacy in Bitcoin Cash without any of the security risks. You know, when you remember when you made that mistake, it's like everyone makes small mistakes in this space. Don't worry about it. And I know a lot of people are gonna, you know, comment on this. My haters will comment and be like, "Oh, but you're so insulting sometimes." A lot of times you want to insult people just to bring about an argument. So at least, you know, by being insulting and making people not like my videos or my style, I get people like Emin Gun to at least correct me when I make a mistake on bulletproofs. But again, everyone makes mistakes, so don't worry about it. Don't let it slow you down. I'm not going to let it slow me down. I got a lot more videos to make on this topic. I'm going to focus more on the entrepreneurial aspects, because that's more my forte. That's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a programmer. But again, I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be more coming out soon.